The night was heavy with silence, the kind of silence that seems to stretch forever, as though the world itself was holding its breath. The ceiling fan turned lazily above me, its hum blending with the steady ticking of the old wall clock. Beside me, my husband lay fast asleep, his chest rising and falling in a rhythm that had become all too familiar to me over the years. He slept the way he lived, steady, sure, without hesitation. There was a comfort in it, but also a distance, as though nothing could disturb the fortress of his rest. I, however, could not sleep. My eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling, my body still, but my mind alive with thoughts I could not escape. It had been like this for weeks, restless nights, long hours of staring into the dark, questioning the choices I had made, the person I had become, and the woman I had once been before life grew so quiet. Across the room, Aaron sat on the sofa near the window. The dim streetlight outside filtered through the curtains, casting soft lines of gold across his face. He wasn't meant to be here tonight, not really. But sometimes life doesn't follow neat plans. Sometimes it folds in on itself, creating moments that should never happen but somehow do. Aaron was more than just a friend of the family. He was almost like a younger brother to my husband, someone he trusted without question. Over the years, Aaron had become a familiar presence in our home, often joining us for dinners, helping with repairs, or simply keeping my husband company on weekends. But for me, his presence carried something else, something I tried hard to ignore. Aaron noticed things. The little things. The way I lingered by the window when my thoughts grew too heavy. The way my smile faltered when I was tired. The way silence sometimes seemed to press too hard on my shoulders. My husband loved me, but he no longer noticed those things. His love was real but settled, comfortable, almost careless in its assurance that I would always be there. But Aaron's gaze, quiet and unspoken, reminded me of the woman I still was, the woman I had nearly forgotten. That night, after dinner, my husband had gone to bed almost immediately. He had been exhausted from a long day at work and drifted into sleep without much more than a mumbled good night. I had sat up for a while, restless, unable to bring myself to lie down. Aaron had stayed, his concern hidden beneath casual words, offering to keep me company while I unwound. We spoke a little at first, but as the night stretched, the conversation faded into a silence that was far more revealing than words. From where he sat, Aaron's eyes met mine across the room. At first, I told myself he was simply lost in thought, but the longer his gaze held mine, the more I understood it was deliberate. There was no boldness in it, no reckless intent, only a quiet intensity that made my heart stumble in its rhythm. The seconds dragged on, the silence thickening. Then Aaron stood. His movements were careful, almost hesitant, as though every step he took was weighed down by a question he hadn't yet answered. My breath caught as he crossed the room, each footstep soft on the wooden floor. My husband stirred faintly beside me, shifting to his other side, but quickly returned to the depths of his dreams. Aaron reached the bed and crouched by my side. His face was close enough for me to see the faint shadow of tiredness beneath his eyes, the tight line of his jaw as though he was fighting with himself. He didn't speak, didn't dare disturb the silence. Instead, his hand hovered in the air between us, trembling slightly, unsure. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, urging me to make a choice. Then with the softest movement, his fingers brushed mine. The touch was so light, I almost thought I imagined it. But when his hand closed gently around mine, reality struck me like a wave. His palm was warm, his grip careful, almost fragile, as though he feared I might break if he held too tightly. My heart thundered in my chest, loud in my own ears, but my body did not move away. I let his hand stay, let his fingers curl around mine, let the silence speak louder than any words we could have dared to say. It wasn't passion. It wasn't fire. It was something far more delicate, more dangerous. It was a connection, the kind that is born quietly, unnoticed, but grows until it cannot be ignored. For so long, I had moved through life unseen in the ways that mattered most. My husband loved me, yes, but he had grown blind to the subtle pieces of me that longed for recognition. Aaron, with that single touch, reminded me that I was still someone worth noticing. I glanced at my husband, asleep beside me, unaware of the shift happening inches from him. A guilt I couldn't name tightened in my chest, but it was drowned by the overwhelming warmth in Aaron's eyes, the unspoken words lingering in the air between us. We stayed like that, his hand wrapped around mine, our eyes locked, the world outside dissolving into nothing. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, it was impossible to tell. Time seemed suspended in that fragile silence, where only the sound of my husband's steady breathing and the thundering of my heart existed. Eventually, Aaron's fingers loosened. His hand slipped slowly from mine, leaving behind a lingering warmth that seemed to seep into my skin. He stood without a word, his face unreadable, and returned to the sofa. I lay frozen, staring into the dark, my hand still tingling with the memory of his touch. Sleep never came to me that night. I listened to my husband breathe beside me, steady and oblivious, and wondered if some part of him, deep in his dreams, had sensed the invisible shift in the air. But morning arrived as it always does, bringing light that made the night feel like a secret no one else would ever know. My husband stretched, pressed a brief kiss against my forehead, and began his day with the same familiar routine. He noticed nothing. Aaron kept his distance that morning, his voice clipped, his gaze carefully avoiding mine. Within the hour he was gone. And yet, his absence carried more weight than his presence ever had. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Life continued as though nothing had happened, but inside me, everything had changed. Aaron remained close to our family, yet he never crossed that line again. He was careful, respectful, even distant, but whenever our eyes met, I felt it. The echo of that night, the memory flickering between us like a candle that refused to die. I found myself reliving that moment in quiet hours, when I stood by the window or lay awake in bed. His hand in mine, the warmth of it, the silent acknowledgement that I was still here, still seen, still alive. It wasn't love in the way people expect, nor was it betrayal in the way people would judge. It was something more elusive, more complicated. A reminder that even in the silence, even in the shadows, our hearts can speak truths we're too afraid to give voice to. Sometimes I asked myself what might have happened if I had pulled away. Would the memory still burn so vividly if I had chosen differently? Would I feel lighter, unburdened by the ache of carrying something unspoken? Or would I feel emptier, haunted by the possibility of what might have been? I will never know. What I do know is that a single moment, as fleeting as the brush of a hand, can change the way you see yourself. That night, Aaron didn't declare his love, and I didn't betray my marriage in the ways people measure such things.